The campaign started in 2006. Since that he joined the firm, and now they have 5 attorneys with a large staff of them. They have full-blown legal license, their insurance, real estate, and immigration. It includes any real estate-related legal matter in the entire United States. So with that, I would like to welcome Rakesh and his team, Anish and Shilpa. Thank you.
I'm going to try not to stand. Yeah, that's not going to work. So I will stand over to the side. Can everybody in the back of the room hear me? Okay? Okay, good. If you can't hear me, just tell me to speak up and I will. So just to kind of give you guys a brief background of the company, I appreciate that generous introduction. We are a full-service law firm based here in Irving, Texas, but we do work all over the country, whether it be immigration or real estate, title services. We have a team of attorneys and staff that we're able to work together. But today what we really want to focus on is EB-5 investments. And as everybody in here has probably heard of EB-5 investments, some people know more than others. But what we're going to try to do today is talk about it in two different perspectives. One perspective is from the investor. So whether it be you, friends, family, or people you know that could possibly be investors in the United States and use the EB-5 program as to take advantage of it to get their green card, or from the side of, are you the developer? Are you thinking about putting together a project in the United States that investors that you may know of, or friends and family, could possibly invest in obtaining their green card? This is all, the program has been around since 1990, is that correct, 1990? And it's been taken advantage, really blowing up in the last 7 or 8 years. So I want to give you a brief history of kind of why the program was even created. It was created to promote economic growth and have job creation. There's 3 different methods in which, and you guys, the PowerPoint is exactly what you guys are going to see up here. There's 3 different methods in which you can invest money. You can invest $1 million. The investor can invest $1 million in a new commercial entity or new commercial enterprise, which means a new business, usually ground up development type, construction type business, and that results directly in the creation of 10 jobs. So that one investor has 10 W-2 jobs for the developer. The second way is invest $1 million in a regional center that then indirectly creates jobs. And we're going to go over indirect and direct here a little bit later in the presentation. And then the third way is to invest a minimum of $500,000 in a new commercial entity in a regional center that is in a targeted employment area or a rural area that results in 10 jobs. So part of what you guys see there is that $1 million goes to $500,000 if it's in a targeted employment area. And the way a targeted employment area is defined, in the state of Texas, every state is different, it's by the mayor and through economic studies. Not saying that it's completely easy to get to, but it's relatively easy. The only thing that I will tell you from this perspective is that these numbers may change as this program is going to be set to end December 9th. It probably will get moved forward with the things that are going on in Congress, and I'm going to let Shay talk about that because he's a liaison in Washington, D.C. for us on a constant basis. So the capital investment required is going to be $1 million or $500,000. Once again, subject to change, maybe in the next 3 to 6 months. Based on the location of the project, the minimum investment is $500,000 or $1 million. Outside of a targeted employment area, you have to invest $1 million or a rural area. So the investor coming from India or whatever they're coming from, they're going to have to invest $1 million in the United States if it's not in a targeted employment area or a rural area. Once again, not necessarily difficult to get a targeted employment area, but there is procedures in which you have to go through. When you have a project in a TDA, you get a $500,000 investment, which substantially increases the number of people that could possibly invest in your investment. So that is a largely helpful thing for investors that could be in India, for example. So this is kind of, this is where it really gets probably the most important for everybody here in the room that's thinking about can I invest, can my friends invest, can my family invest? Where does the money come from? This is what immigration is really looking at from the investor's side. What they're really wanting to know is the money has to be traced back to where it was. So when clients come into my office or I'm talking to somebody in India, my common statement to them is, I have to go back to the day the money was printed. Do I really go back that far? Of course we don't. But what that does is it gets the investor's mindset that, look, Rakesh is going to ask me for tax records, bank records, real estate records, CPA statements, business statements, to show me where that $500,000 was coming from. And that's extremely important. So the reason that I'm more difficult on my clients than maybe immigration is because if I can find a flaw in where that money is coming from, I'm going to stop that person there and not have them spend $500,000 or $1 million in a project that could potentially get rejected. And that's our job from an immigration standpoint. We want to make sure the investor is protected. And we can only rely on the documents the investors give to us. As you guys know, there's all types of different records that are out there that are available. But we've gotten used to looking at what we need to look at to make sure that the money is here. Money can be gifted. So one of the things that we've seen a lot of here recently, especially in India, and I'm going to talk about it in India here in a minute, a little bit more in depth, but we have a lot of investors that are gifting money to their family, that are gifting money to their children, that want to go to school in the U.S., they're already in school in the U.S., that could possibly end up in them holding a conditional green card, so they're not paying out-of-state or international tuition. So they're seeing returns on their money just by gifting their money. All gifting of money is subject to local country tax rules and any U.S. tax laws that may apply. So, for example, let's say that Anish had a family member in India that wanted to invest in a hotel, and he wanted to gift $500,000 to the family member in India to invest in his own project or the project that's coming here. That's allowed. You're allowed to do those types of things. Has to be traced. I have to go back to Anish and find out where he made that money, how he made the money, get the bank records, tax records. We have to do all of it. So the money doesn't have to be just gifted in India. The money can be gifted from the United States and in the United States. It's still subject to the same rules, which changes a lot because, as we all know, sitting in this room or people we know, there's somebody that may be interested in coming to the United States that has the ability to get here, but maybe they need help money being gifted. The big part of that is you can't lend the money. There can't be anything tied to that money. It has to be truly gifted money to that person. All the money has to be from a legitimate source. So what I say by that is that, for example, let's take the recent things that are going on in India with the 500,000 rupee note being taken out of circulation. Essentially, what they're trying to do is clear up all black money so there's corruption is going away. That's the goal of it, right? Well, for immigration standpoint, we're doing the same thing. We want to make sure that that money is coming into the United States, came somewhere legitimately, that the taxes were paid on it, that it went through clean sources, and it wasn't money that we just went and deposited in the bank account and said, okay, let's take it back out and let's invest it in the United States. The government doesn't want to see that. We'll do questions at the end. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through this relatively quickly to let you guys know, because we want to answer questions that you guys may have, because I know everybody has a lot of questions. Must comply with all tax laws in the United States in the source country. And so essentially what I was saying earlier, you have to comply to all the laws that are associated with taxes, and we have to show that. So if money is gifted in the United States, we're going to have to show what the tax consequences of that were. So you want to go to the next one? Yeah. So let's talk about some types of investments, and then I'm going to do a little bit of talking about India specifically. So type of investments for investors. The projects that we've been working on is the ones that you see up here: hospitality, hotels, multifamily, office buildings, retirement facilities, infrastructure, energy, retail, call centers. I'll give you another example of a project that we know about. We didn't work on it, but I forget which state it's in, but it was a toll road. That was a private-public partnership where the toll road was built with EB-5 money. I don't know how many of you guys live here in Dallas, but if you guys see the Omni Hotel downtown Dallas that had EB-5 money involved. So projects are across the board. The big part about the projects, and the reason these are listed as being some of the bigger projects, is because they're ground-up construction. And when you have ground-up construction projects, it creates more jobs directly and indirectly. And that's a big deal for what immigration is looking for, and typically indirectly. Just to give you guys a few facts on where money's been coming from, I would say about 90% of all EB-5 money has come from China. India is a market in which it hasn't gotten a lot of money from. We have several projects that are going on right now where our investors are coming from India. We are vetting their investors. We are going their investments. We're going through their documents. But the reason that's happened is that the education in China on EB-5 is far above and beyond any other market in the country or in the world. And so whenever you get to that point, China's been overwhelmed with agents and people that advertise the large projects in Manhattan and in LA or San Francisco or even Dallas, that those are the projects they've been investing in. But the markets that have been underserved, which is a lot of what we work in, is the projects that are $20 to $100 million projects that people are building different types of facilities that need investors. And so one of the things that our firm is doing is we're going to have several presentations over the next year in India, in different parts of India, just to educate potential investors on projects. We're not allowed to advertise projects. We can't tell them, hey, you need to go invest in this one. That's not our job, but we can introduce them to people that have projects that are available. And once again, Shay here in a second will talk about that. Okay. Shay's going to come up here and talk about the timeline for regional centers here. And Shay, just if you want to come up here, Shay works in our office as out counsel, as an attorney. He's been involved in EB-5 for about 10 years. 7 to 10 years. He's done regional centers, worked on big projects, small projects, so every which kind. And he's also our liaison. And I want you to talk a little bit about what you do in Washington, D.C. as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really excited to join Tell Law Group. Oh man, I have to go back to being a lawyer at a law firm. That was the idea, was not to be a lawyer at a law firm. But I found two great guys, great lawyers, so I'm excited to join them. Historically, I got into EB-5 like 9 years ago, working for, I've been out of law school, licensed for 10 years, working for Chinese import-export groups. So right, the great emergence of EB-5, right? It was this great wealth accumulation in China because of the real estate boom. And then we had EB-5 that was barely used since 1990. And then right in 2006, you had this great emergence of EB-5. And EB-5 can be complicated because it involves a lot of different elements, right? You've got immigration, securities laws, real estate finance. But I think if you go to a trusted group, in the Tell Law Group, you can streamline you through the process, whether you're an investor or a project looking to utilize this capital. So I'm not going to go too much in the weeds. I'll be outside, and so feel free. If you buy me a drink, I'll give you as much free legal advice as you want. Okay, don't tell my wife that. So historically, I've been in-house working for developers managing their EB-5 capital groups. So Rakesh is the immigration guy. I'm more the EB-5 finance guy, whether it's a real estate or a service business. And that's why I make such a great team. Okay, real quick, let's go over the EB-5 timeline. This looks really complicated, but it's really not. Most people in this room are familiar with the U.S. immigration process. You guys and girls know it a lot better than I do, probably. So I'm not going to bore you with the details. The first step, when you decide it's best as an investor, this is something that you want to utilize for your family. The first thing you're going to do is, if you decide to go with the regional center, you're going to choose a regional center. And it's important that, obviously it's illegal for a law firm to make commissions off the placement of an investor. This is a hot topic right now at the SEC. It's not only unethical, but illegal. But I think it's important to ask your attorney, hey, is this regional center, can you help me look up this history to that regional center? Can it check all the boxes? Is it in compliant with USCIS regulations? So that's number one, right? Let's underwrite the regional center. And then you're going to go on and underwrite, what is the project being sponsored by that regional center, right? As you know, unfortunately, there have been a lot of frauds in EB-5. And these are obvious frauds because the investor didn't take the time with his or her attorney to underwrite the project just like you would in any other real estate investment or service business investment. It doesn't have to be real estate, but whatever you're invested in, you got to underwrite it, right? Who are the principals? What's the history? What's the background? Let's look at online for bankruptcies, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to underwrite the project, underwrite the regional center, and then you move into the process. I'm going to go over this very quickly, and then, like I said, come up to us afterwards, and we can break down the process further for you. You're going to file Form I-526. Patch is going to make sure that your source of funds statements, which you're going to track your investments back to a lawful source of funds. We're going to compile the 526, which consists of the project information and the individual investors' information. You're going to file it. There is an adjudication process or period, just like any other area of immigration. And it could take, it's right there, we have 16 months or less. What's interesting then, for the Chinese community, it's become so popular for the first time, retrogression. It's been backlogged, right? Well, EB-5 for the India is current. So it's still that expedited immigration. Unfortunately, Chinese will get so backlogged where what's the point of investing in EB-5 if there's no expedited immigration? So this is a great thing for the Indian community in India right now, just like with other countries other than China. So you wait your 16 months, you're approved, yay, or whatever it is, 12, 24 months. You're approved, and then you file the necessary documents to make sure you enter the country. I'm going to fast forward here. So whatever you invest, they have a 2-year time frame the project does to create the necessary jobs. So you're going to come over on a conditional visa. Within 90 days before that 2-year period, into that 2-year period, you're going to show the government the jobs that were created for the project, and hopefully they were created, right? So you can get the conditions removed and get that permanent visa for you and your family. Next slide, please. And of course, naturalization is not part of the EB-5 program, but you have that option, and you're eligible for that in the future. So what is a regional center? So tonight, I'm going to say this really quickly. So if I talk too fast, say, shut up, what do you say? So, 1990, if I want to open up a restaurant across the street, I employ 10 servers, right? At the minimum wage level, 35 hours a week. And I can show USCIS this. And I made my $500,000 investment, and assuming it's in the right area, and I check all the boxes, I'm going to get my green card. In 1992, the problem was big developers started coming around and say, well, I can't develop, if I build a $50 million apartment complex, I'm probably not going to get 10 jobs even. And even if I could, why would I go through all this rigmarole for $500,000 or a $50 million deal? So the government in 1992 came along and said, okay, if you invest through a entity that's a regional center that's been approved by the federal government, you can count indirect job creation. So now my $200 million high-rise in Lower Manhattan that really only produces 6 jobs, well, there's economic impacts. So they're going to say, well, you produce actually more than 6 jobs, sir, because we're going to bring an economist in. That economist is going to say, well, the economic impact is so strong, the money with other indirect jobs being created, that now it produces 1,000 jobs. So now you can raise up to whatever, 20 million of EB-5. Does that make sense? That's the big reason why people use regional centers.
What percentage would you say of EB-5 investment is regional centers?
98, 99%. I've worked on senior assisted living centers where it's just $3 million. Got to go create 30 jobs. We've done it. It's a direct job. We didn't need a regional center. I worked on an IHOP in Pascagoula, Mississippi. The 2.5 million. We got 30 jobs from servers and hostesses and managers. We didn't need a regional center. And this kind of segues nicely. Well, if I want to manage my deal and I can create enough jobs, maybe I don't need my regional center. But if I'm not looking to manage my deal, I'm investing in a regional center that has a project in Atlanta, and I'm going to live in Beverly Hills, well then I'm going to be a passive investor and maybe go through a regional center. So direct jobs might not be right for you, and nor may a regional center. It's something to think about.
And how many regional centers do you think there are across the country?
Oh, okay, yeah. So about, I think we're up to 800 now. Okay. 800. DJ, put you on the spot here. Around 800.
Pretty much close.
Yeah. It's amazing. This really comes from the popularity of China. Around 6-7 years ago, there were, I think we were looking at it one time. There were 37. So you can see the emergence of popularity. Now, how many of those regional centers are actually active? In my non-PC Texan rhetoric, forgive me. You had good old boy developer, right, out of Dallas. And he says, heck yeah, cheap capital, right? I'm going to create a regional center. So he's going to go out of town and he's going to pay a firm way too much to build a regional center. And he sits there and says, well, where are the Chinese? Why aren't they at my front door? Well, this is what happened. This is why you had a saturation of regional centers in the market. It's because people that think the real commodity here is like anything else. the investors, right, and your contacts overseas. And so I think people are realizing that now, and I think you'll see that. I think we're starting to see it level off.
Excellent.
Next slide, please.
Is the underwriting easy in the regional center? Why it is so popular?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to go with a proven regional center to go to a regional center, right? Have they obtained visas for their investment? Have they obtained visas for their investors, right? And number two, have their projects worked? You know, and who have been the principals of their projects? So these proven developers are proven businessmen and women. And so I think it's like underwriting any other kind of deal. Who are they, number one, right? What's their history? And on from there.
And we, as a group, we've probably done 18, 19 regional centers. As a Patel Water.
Yeah.
Right, and yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I'm the first guy to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't build a regional center. I would love your business, but if you're just building it just to have fun and cross your fingers that you're going to raise capital. I think we'll work with our clients to see, is there a possibility they are going to raise capital? What are their networks? Yeah. Well, you know, I'm from India and I have 4 good friends that are already invested today. Well, direct jobs, regional center, maybe you are in a position to create a regional center. I think that's the biggest kind of fable that attorneys have told their clients is, oh, you need a regional center because I want my $100,000. And we see this all the time in the market. So I think it's at a level of, like anything else, it's greed, right? So next slide, please. Is that it? Yep. So we went over direct and indirect. I was ahead of myself. Sometimes direct jobs work in service-related businesses. Other times, if you're building an apartment complex and you only got 2 leasing agents and a manager and maybe a security guard, well, I need 20 million or 85 to make up 20% of my tax back. You know, I'm going to need a regional center. So I'm going to want that indirect job credit. So who calculates the indirect job creation? So now we're getting really niche. There are actually people, economists, that specialize in EB-5 indirect job creation. So is that niche or what? I don't know what they're going to do after when China is really retrogressed. I mean, and they'll be looking for jobs. We'll go back to the regular economic studies they were doing before. But we want to use people, and we do use economists that already have their methodologies approved by the USCIS. So that's another important. You want to make sure all your subject matter experts, immigration attorneys, securities lawyers, regional centers, your project, they all have EB-5 experience, right? Just like anything else. You wouldn't invest in an oil and gas company, right? If those guys were doing retail developments for the last 50 years. So that's just something to think about. It's common sense, really, in underwriting these deals. Next slide, Anish, please.
So the jobs created during, let's say for example, a construction project. The jobs that were created while building the project, are they counted against EB-5 job creation?
Good question. They can be counted 2 ways. If the project exceeds 2 years, they may be direct jobs.
Okay.
If it's not, you still get credit for the construction jobs, but it's a portion of, it's not like you're going out and counting it.
The actual jobs that's created after the completion of the project, that's what make more sense for USCIS?
No, I mean, usually you see a combination of the two. It could be all one, all the other. You just better get your 10 eligible jobs per investor.
But if you consider a strip mall, strip mall is considered all the construction workers are there, architect is there, then you have a manager. It's considered the 10 jobs, right? There itself you need 10 people for at least for one year. That is considered 10 jobs, right? The direct jobs.
Right. I mean, your subject matter experts, your attorneys and stuff, you're probably not going to want to count them because they're not working on that full time for 2 years. And most strip malls, I could be wrong, most strip malls I've seen, they don't last 2 years. But you would still get indirect job credit for your construction jobs. And there will be a manager and a security guard and a leasing agent, and those add up. But it's going to be heavy indirect. And there's also...
Or they are heavy indirect.
You get credit for revenue.
What is the percentage, direct and indirect?
It varies. On bigger deals, you're going to see it scale more towards indirect. On smaller deals, you see direct make up more.
I agree, but what is the criteria to get the approval from the USCIS?
Okay, as long as they use economic methodologies that are previously accepted by USCIS, I will break out the equations for you because I'll be lying if I tell you what they mean. But there's accepted methodologies where you're plugging in your construction expenses, and you're plugging in your revenue outputs too that you project, because those count too, right? That's an economic impact. And before, it's not like you're just crossing your fingers to the end. You do a preliminary analysis beforehand before you enter into the agreement with the economist to make sure that it's going to be covered.
How will I can invest in the stock market and buy a Google stock for $2 million? I can get a green card, right? Huh? That is indirectly creating a job. The Google price is up, and Google is investing in my money into some other,
Well, it's not at risk because you can take it out at any time.
Money has to be at risk.
Yeah.
And that, there's other methodologies that go into that, but I see exactly what you're saying.
And they won't be able to trace your capital into your capital. Was that job creation an approximate result of your capital? You would never know, right? It'd be hard to line up with USCIS.
Let's try to go ahead and keep going with this, and then we'll ask some questions if you want. Yeah. Keep going. Next slide.
Yeah. So
Well,
a lot of
this-
times, yeah. Feel free to jump in here.
Yeah, just investor participation whenever we're talking about what does the investor have to do in the U.S. once they invest. It really depends on what type of investment it is. Were they a direct job creation? Was it a direct investment into like a hotel that I was talking about earlier? Was it indirect through a regional center? Indirect through a regional center, which is most of your investments. The investor that's coming from India has really nothing to do with the project. They can live anywhere, do anything. They don't have any say-so in that project. They're part of that new company. If they invest, go ahead.
No, I was going maybe we should kind of set out an example. So, my name's, obviously my last name's Patel, so I'm going to give you a hotel example, okay? But let's say I want to build a hotel. I want to build a $10 million hotel, and I can go to my partners. I can go to guys like Rakesh, I can go to my friends who are in the hotel business and have them invest with me. Now, typically if I'm doing a $10 million project, you're going to need about $3.5 million down from a finance standpoint. That's when the bank will give you the rest of the money. I could go to other people, individuals here in the U.S. for that money, or I could use the EB-5 process to raise that money as well. And what the benefit of that is I can call my cousin in India and help him get a green card faster by having him invest in the hotel project. So if I did a direct hotel project, right? Most $10 million hotels, it'll be 100 rooms. You'll create about 30 jobs between maids, front desk people, and management. If I go the indirect route and with 30 jobs, safely you're going to say you're going to get 2 investors. So I can get about $1 million in EB-5 money, $500,000 each. Now if I go the indirect route, I can probably, the indirect with the regional center, I can probably qualify for probably like 80.
Well, we just did that down in the South, and it was 119 indirect jobs.
Right.
Right.
So now with 119 jobs, I can get about 10 investors. That's $5 million. I can get half the capital for the hotel that I want to build. And I don't even have to put a cent in. So that's how it helps from the developer side. That's where you're looking at from the developer. It's cheap financing that's coming in. Now from my cousin's standpoint, let's say I get it's a Marriott product. I get my Marriott approval. I get the piece of land under contract. I got everything ready to go just to break ground. So I call my cousin up in India, or actually what I do is I call Patel Law Group. We step in and we set up the project. We get the economic study. We get the business plan, and then we get everything ready to go from an EB-5 standpoint. So when my cousin in India is ready to invest in the project, we're ready to go. So that way, all he has to do is invest the money. Next day, they could, Rakesh and them can file his application with immigration. Typically, what, 18 months to get
18 months
to get a temporary green card. The hotel project is starting. I'm already breaking ground. I'm going up with my hotel project. I have nothing to do with my cousin at that point. I'm starting my development side. And once that hotel is going and it's running for 4 years, so 18 months plus
24. I mean, it's going to be about 4 years.
About 4 years, my cousin's going to apply for his permanent green card, and that's when it gets, as long as that hotel project created the job that the business plan said it was going to create, then he gets approved. Does that kind of simplify it, makes more sense?
It's essentially from an investor standpoint, it's an avenue in which to obtain a green card. The money's at risk. Just like if there was no immigration, you invest $500,000 like I did tomorrow or anybody did, the money's at risk. There's no guarantee that you're going to get your money back. The market could go down, your money's going to be gone. But the investor will get, if their money is sourced and we can trace it back, and there's the investment is legitimate from the date that they apply, right now it's taking 18 months, they will come here on a conditional green card, and then we on the back side of it, the Patel Law Group, is taking care of and making sure that all the metrics are being met. The developers running their hotel, the investors living their lives wherever they need to do, we're making sure that from a fiduciary duty, whether it be the regional center or it be us as representing the investors or us representing the regional center, that the development is doing what it's supposed to, so we can then report to immigration at 21 months, this guy now is ready for his permanent green card. And that's a simplified version of the process. And so we represent regional centers, we represent investors, and we represent developers. We represent all three. There's not one exclusively. We don't promote one over the other, obviously, because we can't do that, but we're able to take somebody that's going through the process from beginning to the very end and help them out. And the developer loves it because they don't deal with the immigration headache. The regional center has somebody that's representing them, and the investor, that's my job, is to make sure that the investor's documents and everything are correct. Just like you do an H-1B, except now we're dealing with $500,000 and not just the H-1B process. So I guess that's kind of broke down into a nutshell with Anish and what Shay were saying, what the EB-5 process looks like. Now, there's a lot of questions that go into it, right? I mean, from the investor and the money and the deals and things like that, where do you find a regional center? Where do you find a development? Those are legitimate questions, and those are questions that we can help you answer. And we can direct you in the right place, and we can make introductions to the right people so you know that. So this isn't all just about whether you want to invest, you have a friend that wants to invest. You guys may have developments. I was talking to somebody, a client the other day, about doing a call center in a rural area or a development center and outside of a DFW metroplex that is going to employ a lot of jobs. It may fall into a regional center in the indirect job creation because of training, so on and so forth, which fits into the backgrounds that you guys are in, right? And so those are legitimate businesses that are going on every day in the EB-5 world. And what we want to do is we truly want to educate our clients, our population, trips to India, and educate people on EB-5 process and how it works. I can't go into somebody's bank account and say, make this clean. That's not going to happen. But we can let them know, and then they're going to give us the documents to let us know whether they can invest or not. And so I don't know if you guys have any other comments, but we want to answer as many questions as we possibly can while we're here. Go ahead.
Now I got Patel's time. I can ask you one question. I'm
Sure.
You're all into IT business, right?
Sure.
So if you go to a small remote area and open a staffing firm and we provide employment for 10 people, as you said, does that comes in as a regional center?
So let me answer
Your
that.
expertise in that.
So let me answer that, and Shay, feel free to jump in. So essentially, first you have to find a regional center that covers the area. So let me give you a little bit of background on what a regional center means. A regional center will say, for example, cover the DFW. So when I apply for my own regional center with immigration. And I say that I want to cover the DFW Metroplex, and I want to be able to build hotels, office parks, and retirement facilities. I submit that to immigration. If everything is right and the hypotheticals and all the studies that we give them are correct, they approve it. Now I own a regional center that anybody in the country can come use me if I choose to develop a hotel, office park, or retirement facility.
So is there a category of
So-
only have you get the approval?
We would have to look and see, is there anything out there that covers IT consulting services as a regional center? If there's not, the possibility of opening one. The only problem that you have in the services industry is indirect job creation, right? Because there's not going to be a lot of indirect job creation. You'll have direct job creation if you're a staffing company and you have 100 employees worked out in different places, but the indirect job creation, is that correct, is going to create an issue.
Yeah, I worked on it wasn't a staffing company, but it was an office. It was a service business. So what would be your indirect job creation in that scenario? It would be revenue outfit. Like what's your projected revenue?
No, it could be anything. Like for example, right? Okay, forget about the regional center. Because you say there's another option, they can invest $1 million into it, right? So
Or $500,000. Okay,
so we
Yeah.
developed this firm which has access to 20 different employees working from that location to various different projects, right? And somebody from India wanted to invest $1 million to buy and acquire the company. Can we still, is that enough paper?
So you're asking if a staffing company will qualify for an EB-5 project?
That would be a direct job creation. So that's direct.
Yeah.
So for every investor you have to create 10 jobs,
Yes.
right? So then if your example of 20, we always like to leave a cushion. So let's say it's 25, okay? That would probably create 2 investors worth of money. That's $1 million. Does that make sense? So then now you're direct. Now there's no more regional center. You don't have to worry about all of those regulations. You still have to worry about EB-5 regulations. It is following them, but we're not now dealing with a regional center. You're dealing with direct job creation in your business with that.
Right, yeah, and that's a great example of when you don't need a regional center. Because you created 10 full-time W-2s at 35 hours a week.
Because the reason is.
But they have to be U.S. resident or citizens.
True, because most of us like the idea,
Right.
if the revenue is there,
Right.
they all can start thinking to get onto this new stream of business.
Right.
It is possible.
It is possible. It's the avenue less used in immigration from an EB-5. But once again, it's the avenues that also haven't been pursued. That in especially in our IT model that we have in the Indian staffing companies that we all know about, it's not one that's been necessarily pursued. So if you take that and you just start thinking in your mind, what other areas can I possibly do that with? Because I'll ask you, would you know of 2 people in India that would possibly invest $500,000? And typically the answer would be yes, right? Yeah, exactly. And so there is that possibility without the regional center. When you get the regional center involved, you're really looking for that indirect job creation so you can bring 10, 15, 20, 30 investors over because of your project size. But we've done Anish and I are doing a direct job, direct development for 1 investor at $1 million because they're helping their family out down by Houston. And that's it. They just wanted to help 1 person out. That was all they wanted to do. And so they're doing it, which is fine. We have no problem with that because that's what they're doing. But what you're saying is exactly kind of in that same model. We'll go back there.
Yeah, so this is for example, I have a company here, and my company is a 10-year-old company, and I want to sponsor a green card through EB-5 for one of my niece or nephew who is in India, moved to US, who's been living here. And can I take money from my company, invest, and get him a green card through EB-5?
You want to answer that?
No, it doesn't
Gifted.
make sense.
Yeah, you're talking about gifting the money to your niece or nephew?
No, I want a solution from you. Do I need to gift money?
You would have to gift it to
my
them.
company, or
You would have to gift them the money, and then they would have to then invest in a qualifying business that we just described, one of the type of businesses, whether it be a direct or an indirect. But you would be gifting them the money, and whatever tax consequences are there, and then they will turn around and invest that money in whatever you set up.
And you, the giftor, would be treated as the investor for a USCIS source of funds investigation.
Yeah.
So they'll go back, and then we got to prove it all the way back to you.
So I would be vetting your funds to make sure that your funds were okay, that you gifted over to your niece or nephew for them to then invest. And that's happening a ton. In the example that I just talked about, the one that we're doing $1 million investment, it's the uncle has gifted money to the niece. It's the exact same example. They're just because they're helping family out.
So that can be worked out.
Yes.
So another question is, because we are gifting the money within US, do you think the tax, we have to pay the tax on that?
No, so the gift tax aspect of it, everybody has an exemption up to about $5.25 million. So it does count against your $5.25 million exemption. But a married couple, it's $10.5 million at this point. So yeah, you do take a hit against your gift tax exemption. It's a $500,000 gift hit that you take against your exemption. But if you're, like I said, but that's only an issue if your estate is worth $10.5 million.
I know you guys are attorneys, but you have seen a lot of clients from India, right? How difficult is it to bring money from India to here, even if it is legal?
Transfer of the money?
Yeah.
Not very difficult at all.
Okay.
We haven't had any problems getting wired funds over from India. It's being
The Indian
reported.
government has some restrictions.
They have some restrictions, but you can, so
No, $250.
it's $250, but what the restriction is that you yourself in your bank account, what you can do is let's say you're in India and you send 250,000 over, but you have 500, the money can be then sent over to cousin, uncle, brother, mom, dad, they can transfer it over. I just have to show that you sent that money over.
So
the
as
money
long as
came
we
over.
documented
Yes.
against my funds, we are.
Yes.
So we saw that last year around 8,000 Chinese applied, right? And then around 1,600 Indians applied for EB-5. So how soon do you think India is also going to get into backlog?
Ways away.
Yeah, it's a long way. This is Chinese backlog happened 8 years, really into the deep part. I mean, it took a while.
I mean, I think there are other motivations there, right?
The market stability in China. You got to remember the reasons why the Chinese investors want to come to the U.S. as well. They want to get their money out of those markets. They just want access to the capital markets. They want their green card. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And so what's happening in India, I think the Indian investor, and I can't speak for all Indian investors, right? But I think the Indian investor is a little more cautious and also isn't as in big of a hurry, right? Because there isn't that need necessarily. Other factors, children, students going to school, other factors are playing in. So,
So
Historically,
you refer regional centers for your plants?
yeah, we can introduce, we have regional centers that we know. If not, we can research them and get introductions. We make all the phone calls. We were just on one the other day from Alabama. So we're working with one in Alabama. We don't know the regional center, but we're referring our client to the regional center so he can use their regional center for his
Like
project.
if we like to buy a regional center, would you be able to bet us on the regional center?
that's a great question. Yeah, that happens every once in a while. Now, and there's things you need to look at, right? Because you have to amend it through USCIS because they approved that regional center for the prior management. So it depends what your timeline is, but that's a really good point.
Because the other option is starting your regional center. So you've got to look at the timeline, look at the history of that regional
It's
center.
18 months, 24 months, just to get approved on a regional center.
You're looking right at like 11 to 12 months, and it's gone down a lot because of the USCIS. This is a money-making mechanism for USCIS, right? These filing fees are getting higher and higher, and so you're seeing the processing times go down because they're increasing their staff.
I mean, just for example, an investor right now, it's $1,500 to file the application. On December 23rd, it's $6,500. In regional center, $6,000 right now to file the application. On December 23rd, it goes up to over $17,000. I mean, these are the new fees that everybody knows about. The December 23rd they're hitting, it's hitting everybody. And so the fees are, and the investment amounts might go up too, but these are just fees. You had a question about, oh, sorry. He had a question and then I'll get back to you. One minute, let me,
No,
yeah.
One or two questions. Regarding the pay, 36 hours per week, 35. What is the minimum pay? So the federal minimum?
Whatever the federal minimum wage is.
725.
And the second one is, you said they give a temporary green card. After 4 years, they give the full green card.
No, it's after 21 months they give a full green card. After you apply, after they've been in the U.S. 21 months. What we're saying is they're going to apply, and then it's going to take 18 months to get approved, and then 21 months after they've been here, then we apply for a permanent green card. So it's 21 months after they've been in the United States, we apply for a permanent, just like marrying a U.S. citizen. Same process.
For how long you have to make sure you create a job for 10 people? 10
And it's going
jobs?
to,
How long is the-
It's 2 years at the time you apply to have the conditions removed. Those jobs better be created. So there's not, in theory, if it kind of lines up with the business plan, you could essentially hire all those employees the night before you file your removed conditions. I wouldn't, because it would be a little suspicious, right? So you want, it's whatever the business plan says. You know, there is some fluidity there. There's some flexibility because USCIS understands that we're working with businesses and not everything goes A, B, C, D, E, right? But the idea is, you know, for 6 months before you file to remove your conditions, you want to make sure that those jobs are in place and you have a history of job creation.
And the last one is
Okay.
what happens if the project got busted? For some reason, I started, in the meanwhile, say approvals, some problem with the approvals, and it's taking time. Still, can they get the green card before 2 years?
You better
I started the hotel.
have a good excuse, right? This
There has
happens,
to be a
right?
really good reason.
Hurricanes,
But
we saw this happen in hurricanes, but
Well,
it's
you know.
it's not like, oh geez, I forgot to file my permit, so it delayed us 3 years. You need to have a good excuse. I'm not saying there's flexibility in all types of immigration.
Right. There's always going to be flexibility. It has to be a good reason. You don't really want to get to that point where it doesn't get there. So, I mean, I can't tell you, yes, you can or you can't because we don't know what the reason is. But, you know, let's say the economy goes bust and the project goes south.
That's what I'm saying.
They're going to lose their money just like you're going to lose your money, right? Remember, whenever an investor is investing in these projects, it's like a regional center, they're actually a lender. They get their money back before you get yours because you own the equity, right? But if the project goes south, it goes south. It's an investment risk on their part. There's no guarantee of any money going back. And you cannot guarantee in any document statements, anything you ever tell an investor that I'll promise you'll get your money back. You're getting a lot of problems with the SEC if you do that. So, back there?
Thank you.
So, what's the time period for getting an ROI on the investment?
You're talking about ROI on the investment?
So, actually, like you put 500 days deposit, and your business is running. So, what's the split of income that you get from that?
If it's a direct investment, it's between the investor and the developer. It's whatever agreements, partnership. I mean, Anish does that.
It's going to be like on a project by project basis, right? For most people, if they're doing the development side, you want to have as favorable terms as possible because you want to attract the investors as well. But you also, from the investor standpoint, a lot of times these guys are just looking to get a green card. So if they get their money back, they're just happy with it. So it really depends on what project you invest in. And they could all vary.
And immigration has no requirements of ROI. I mean, they don't come back and say you have to do this or you have to do that. It's in the agreements. And then whenever you do regional center investments, which are the indirect job creation, where you're just lending the money to the developer, it's just interest. And they're getting a very small percentage of interest. And then what their investors really looking for is what's my exit. When is this guy going to refinance me after I get my green card so I can get my $500,000 back? When you're a direct investor, you're an equity partner, so you're on equal footing with whomever the developer is based on your agreements. So you could technically get 10% investment, let's say 10%. Let's say the project's $10 million and $1 million comes from overseas. That would be 10%, right? You don't have to give the investor 10%. You can give them 1%. There's no correlation between investment, and that's a business decision. That's not a immigration decision necessarily.
The developer knows as well because you're getting an additional benefit out of it. So they're going to take advantage of that situation as well. But there's not going to be like he was saying on a $10 million project. If you invest $500,000, then you're going to get 5%. He may come back and say, you know what, I'm willing to give you 3% for $500,000.
I think that's, I'm sorry, what's your name? Streeter?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the top 5 questions you should ask, right, for your investment. What's the exit? How am I getting my money back? Is there a refinance? Are you going to sell this 5 to 7 years? So, I mean, I think you hit on something right there. That's a top 5 underwriting question.
And that's what investors are going to ask. I mean, look, you're getting money from India, smart, intelligent business people. They know exactly what was going on, and they want to know, how do I get out? At the end of the day, how do I get out and get my money back? Because they may be in the U.S. living and investing in other places, working in other places, but it's still $500,000 that's sitting there that they want their money. So, yeah.
So what if person wants to raise a loan in India, just in case if he has a lot of assets and wants to raise a loan?
So you can do that. So what you can't do is borrow money that doesn't have any collateral attached to it. Okay? So if you have, let's say you have a $500,000 piece of real estate in India that's documented, and I can show that the value is $500,000. There's no money on it, but you don't want to sell it yet. You could possibly get a loan against that property, show the proper documents. It could be in the U.S., it could be anywhere, and then take that money and invest it in the investment here, because now you still own the land that's worth the $500,000. So you can do that, but you can't say, like, if I wanted to borrow money from somebody and say I'll pay you back, later on. That's not going to work because there's no collateral attached.
That's the most common way in China. I know it's a different market, but in the Chinese market, that this mechanism works is because of the accumulation housing prices, right? They take a loan off their mortgage.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
how they do it in
exactly right.
China. Yeah.
Similar to the economy.
Yeah. So you're going to see that a lot. So there's so many different avenues in which the money can come. It's a matter of now finding everybody's got in different situations.
If they don't have any questions, I have one question that I'm contemplating to use. I have a company in India. It's my cousin who operates it. I don't have any ownership. I have a used company. He has what I'm planning to do is I want to buy the company to our company. Then I have to pay him the money. So I pay this company share, the company share in the US entity. Can you consider that now my US entity is employing 100 people?
How about we do this, whenever we're done, let's talk about that one individually. So it may take some explanation on that. When we're done, we'll talk about it. Okay.
What's your experience with, well, I mean, maybe even just as the Patel Law Group, what are your fees for the actual investor from the time he files his I-526 and moving forward? You get the call, hey, Rakesh.
So on fees, it's going to depend on the project and what we're working on. So I won't talk about their fees because theirs are on deal based. Mine are the immigration part. Our investor fees are anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 for the family, which is normal in the market. That's what you're going to see. So that's going to cover, depending on the project and what they're working on, the number of people investing in that project. It's going to cover them, the investor, their spouse, and any unmarried children under 21.
What, and if any, fees are you finding for add-on fees, if you want, for regional center? Because the investor is obviously legal fees, and then you've got in regional center fees. I mean, what's your...
So yeah, it's a good question because that's something you guys would need to know. So what an investor is going to experience from a fee standpoint is the attorney's fees, which I just talked about. And if they're dealing with a regional center, the regional centers are going to have an administrative participation, call it what you want, type of fee. They could be anywhere as low as $5,000 to $10,000 to upwards of, what have you seen on the high end?
Yeah, the larger regional centers, you're looking $30,000 to
$30,000 to $50,000 per investor. So think about that. That investor is going to pay, let's say, $20,000 on the high end in legal fees, and on the high end another $30,000 to a regional center. So they're paying an extra $50,000 of just fees on top of the $500,000. Now, the $50,000, while we always ask our clients, we want to trace it, doesn't have to be traced because immigration doesn't ask that to be. But we would rather us source those funds anyways. Just an FYI.
But if you make a traditional investment into, I'm going to use real estate again, I know these aren't all these deals, if you make an investment into a real estate, an equity investment into a real estate deal, they're going to charge you a promote, right, or a management fee. Well, in EB-5 you can't do that because the full $500,000 has to be at risk the entire time. So they don't want any plucking of that a portion of that $500,000. So think of the administrative fee up front as what would standardly be translated into a promote or a management fee.
Yes, sir.
Do you, who's going to do the RBI disclosure in India? Somebody has to disclose to RBI the source of funds, and then we get authorization to transfer the funds from India to US, right? So
usually the investor is dealing that in their CPA or their accountant there.
It has to be available in dollar format, right?
I'm sorry?
It has to be available in dollar format, okay? Dollar.
Right.
So it's we have to find the
Right.
CPA in India.
Yeah, and typically the investor that has that kind of money, that has the ability to invest, already has the ability to find somebody that's going to help them with that. I mean, because we're talking about $500,000 of legitimate, clean money that isn't black money or anything like that. They've already went through a process by which they know what to do, and so we let them handle that. That's personal to them.
On the whole, whenever I got an Indian investor, I was excited as a young attorney because it was less work. Because China, right, there's a $50,000 threshold. So you'd have 10 giftees coming in. Number two, you're translating a lot more documents. Things are a lot clearer in India. So I think my point is that if you feel like you might have a complicated situation, it's probably not. It may be, but it's probably not, because the industry has historically been dealing with very complicated situations in the Chinese market.
From a relative terms, the Indian investor in vetting their source of funds and documents is immensely easier than it is from a Chinese standpoint. Yeah.
From a product point of view, you have mentioned that if underwriting documentation is missing, USDA may flag it and they deny the case. So what kind of guarantee is provided from a law group point of view, or the kind of innocent experience, or how is that?
Did everybody hear the question? Okay, so basically asking that, we mentioned that from a fraud standpoint, in regional centers, regional center, correct? That if you're underwriting it, if there's any fraud issues, we could have problems. What does the law group do? I'm gonna let you answer this, Shay. What does the law group do to help make sure that that doesn't happen, and in the event it does happen, that we're able to understand what's going on? But really just a prevention of it.
Yeah, thanks for giving that one to me. No, I think something that Rakesh does is you get the ducks lined up beforehand. right? And I've been a part of files, I know this guy has too, where, and I'm sure BJ's probably seeing this, we're like, we're not gonna file this because this is a waste of time for us, it's a waste of time for you, it's a waste of time for the developer, because this is gonna get denied. So it's a checklist, we know exactly what they're looking for. Now granted, situations do arise where people take money, and they don't put your money where you're supposed to, and that's just part of the inherent risk of making the investment. But from a investor's documentation perspective, we're going to know before we file it, unless somebody fabricated documents, whether it's going to pass the threshold, the test or not. And once again, that's why it's important to the project level to underwrite the best you can. It's never 100% right, but the project and the regional center development to make sure there's some operational history there in EB-5. Does that answer your question?
Any more? Yep.
So we can apply loan here also in US, right? If the candidate has enough funds, we can apply the loan and invest that amount in the 500K in the regional center, right?
What do you mean by apply for a loan here? So what would the loan be?
So like, let's take an example, I'm the candidate, okay? So I have a gas station, okay? So I can like take a loan from my existing gas station or existing business and invest that 500 loan into the regional center, right?
Wait, are you talking about like for a relative overseas?
No, he's talking about, he's an investor, and he has a gas station, or you have any other source of money, and you're just trying to you're taking a loan from your own business?
Yes.
And putting it in?
It's a case-by-case basis. We're going to look at, is it securitized? I mean, are there other, if it's owned by 100 of you guys and you're taking a loan out for the whole deal, do you wholly own it and you put up all the collateral of the land and the bricks and mortar? Well, it's securitized. I mean, that happens it's a mortgage, right? That's what they use in China all the time. So yeah,
It could work.
Yeah.
It could work, it just depends on the circumstances, the debt, what's there, what you're putting up against it, all of those.
The last thing USDA asks, there's security implications involved, being a creditor investor, that's a whole nother subject matter. But USDA doesn't want individuals, of course, taking out SBAs, their American friends, or credit cards, unsecured debt, so their friend can invest in an EB-5 project. That's the last thing we want, right? We want sophisticated investors that this money's backed up, and we can show it's backed up or fully collateralized if it's a loan structure.
And you were saying from December something the fees will increase?
December 23rd.
23rd? How much they increase?
I mean, there's fees. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm sure some of you have seen it, but the investor is going from 1,500, the 5.6 application to 6,500 or something like that. The regional center fee, if you want to start your own regional center, is going from 6,500 to 17,000 something. I mean, I-129 fees are going up, N400 fees are going. I mean, they're just all going up. All the fees are going up. I wouldn't say all of them, but most of them are going up in December 23rd. So the guys that are applying for everything before December 23rd will save, like an investor is going to save $5,000.
So you suggested a regional center, or it's our responsibility to find a regional center?
We can help. We can help. I mean, we're not going to tell you who to use. We'll even be on the phone call. The other day, we were on the phone call with our client, making sure that this regional center knew what they were doing, and so we were asking all the questions for our client. We want to make sure that you're protected. That's our job at the end of the day. And so, I mean, we didn't know this regional center, so we wanted them to get us the agreement. We wanted to vet them. We'll go back and look at their projects, and that's part of our job. That's what you're paying the attorneys for, to make sure.
And it depends, obviously, several factors. Right? We don't just say, hey, everyone's going to XYZ regional center, even though they have a great operating history for EB-5. Because about the project, locale, your motivations, right? Your objectives, personally. And so there's several factors that we need to evaluate before making recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? If you guys have any questions while we're at our booth, or you see us this evening, let us know. We'd be more than happy to answer them. If there's something that you think of or anything that help that you need. But we appreciate your time. I know there was a lot of information, and it may have been some that most of you guys already knew, or some that's new information, but anything that you guys have, let us know. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.